Angela is a labor market specialist based in the World Bank office in Beirut. She joined the World Bank as a research analyst, and then she joined the jobs group as a junior professional associate based in Washington, D.C., and then moved back to Lebanon. She leads and works on a range of operational and analytical projects, focusing on the areas of jobs and employment, working across sectors. Angela holds a master's degree in development studies from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, and a bachelor degree in economics from the AUB. And our next speaker is, Ms. Samia Melhem is joining us from Washington, and she's going to give the presentation with Angela. Samia is a lead policy specialist on digital development at the World Bank Group. She currently manages several digital government operations, leveraging disruptive technologies to improve delivery of public services in education, health, and social protection. She's also leading the research on digital resilience and digital responses to COVID for public service delivery. During her career at the World Bank Group, Samia led operations in East and Central Europe, Asia, Middle East, and Africa. She authored several publications on telecom, policy and regulation, digital government, electronic procurement, cloud computing innovation, entrepreneurship, open data, and gender inclusion. She holds degrees in electrical engineering, computer science, finance, and acquired various accreditations in project leadership and disruptive technologies. Samia is a part-time faculty at the George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs and is a tech board member representative at Life Lebanon Diaspora Association. So join me in welcoming Angela and Samia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lama. So as Lama said, I'm an AUB alumni, so it's an honor to be here, yet it's very intimidating. I'm usually the one sitting down and listening and not standing here. So I hope this will be a useful session. So my session will be about how to leverage big data to inform skills program and policy dialogue. So I will first start by giving an overview of skills need and jobs today. I will then continue by giving some example of how big data can be used, and then just briefly on the role of government, advantages, disadvantages, and give a quick example of some of the initiatives we're doing here in Lebanon. I'm going to go fast. I know it's the end of the day, so anyone is interested to know more or would like to discuss, I'll be staying around, so happy to talk also in more detail with anyone who's interested. So it's no surprise that today technology is revolutionizing labor markets. There are jobs that will be destroyed due to automation, but there's also a lot of jobs that will be created following innovation. So some of the questions that a lot of policymakers are asking themselves is how to prepare the workforce, how to minimize and mitigate the negative consequences that could lead to unemployment, underemployment, inactivity with this fourth revolution. So some of the questions are, for example, how to capture these trends, how to understand the jobs and occupations that will be created, how to understand those that will be destroyed, how to ensure this transition between jobs that will be destroyed and jobs that will be created. So these are some of the questions that big data is trying to address, and I'm going to give some examples. So there are, nowadays, there's this, I don't know if the clicker works. It does. So although there are 47 jobs that definitely, 47% of jobs that definitely require digital skills, you have 45% of jobs that require at least a minimum level of digital literacy. So it's becoming really important and unavoidable to have the minimum level of digital literacy to remain relevant in the labor market of today. So those are just examples of how the US labor market is showing, and it's the same globally. We can see that especially after the COVID pandemic, 2020, the share of digital jobs, type of jobs, is rapidly growing. And data scientists is actually among the top. Those are some numbers. I'm just going to go quickly up. So I just wanted to ask the audience in terms of data. So there's two categories of data. There's qualitative data that you get through focus groups, interviews, and key informant interviews, one-on-one, but there's also quantitative data. And when we want to understand information on labor market, skills, occupation, sector, what are 3 sources that are usually used? Can anyone name 3 or at 1? No? I'm sorry? The sources of data. These are indicators in the market, but how do we get data? Surveys, so labor force surveys, enterprise surveys, administrative data, that's the second source. Focus groups is qualitative. Quantitative, we have labor force survey to understand skills, occupation. We have enterprise data to understand how firms are growing, what are the type of jobs they're creating, what are their sales, productivity. And then we have administrative data from the government, from programs. The third one, IoT. So the third one is the type of information that big data provides. So, for example, online job postings. This is something I will delve more into. So when we look at what is big data is characterized by 3 V's, we call them: volume, velocity, and variety. Volume is the sheer volume that you get from big data. We're talking millions, hundreds of millions of data points. The variety is whether they're unstructured, structured, or semi-structured, and I'll give some example later on. The velocity is the rate at which data is generated and extracted. Some other places you'll also find 5 V's, so in addition to those 2 V's, you have another V that is veracity, which is how of quality is the data, how accurate it is, how structured and accurate it is. And the fifth V is value, but I'm just going to focus on those 3. Labor force surveys, enterprise surveys, those are surveys that are structured, but they're periodical. You have a snapshot at one point in time only. Whereas when you talk about big data, and here, for example, which is used in labor market analysis and skills, are online job posting. This is the most used type of data source. Those sources are real time. Every day there's million and million of job posting done. There's million other people posting their skill set. So these are skill set that are of big volume, of dynamic nature, and although they're unstructured, that's the only issue. So obviously big data can be used for any type of sectors. Healthcare, these are some examples. Agriculture to improve productivity, traffic to improve safety. But I'm just going to focus specifically on labor markets. So as I said, big data, one of the sources to get information on skills in big data is online job posting. And I'm going to give an example of how the EU has approached this, because they realized that they need to understand much better how the jobs are changing, how the people's skills are, to identify the gaps and the needs for trainings. So as you can see in this slide, the boxes in green are countries. So a lot of countries put almost all the jobs available online, or at least half of them. So it provides a huge source of information on the jobs that are demanded by employers. I'm not going to get much into details. I'm happy to talk to anyone who would like to discuss it, but the idea is that the EU wants to get more skills intelligence. They want to understand today what are the jobs needed and what are the skills required. And with that, they can also compare with the skills of the population, the skills that the universities are graduating students with, and try to understand dynamically what are the gaps. So they're doing this in a very dynamic and systematic manner. Through this, the EU has also realized that there are new occupations that are coming up. There are occupations that didn't exist before in the classification that the EU has. So this also helps them update their classification for the skills. one other advantage of big data and skills understanding is the granularity that it provides, which usually labor force surveys or administrative data do not provide. So here are two examples of how granularity of data help us understand better the skills needed. Between 2010 and 2020, on this graph, those are the skills that a marketing specialist needs. And you can see that over a 10-year period, the top skill need change is digital marketing and social media. In 2020, they didn't require the skill as much. In 2010, they didn't require the skill as much that they needed today. So this tells us that any training or education program has to have those skills, or else they will not be relevant when they come to graduate in the labor market. Another example is there are jobs that will be destroyed. That is the nature of it. But how can we transition people from the jobs that will be created? The big data also helps us understand it. So a bus driver here has overlapping skills with an operation and maintenance specialist, which is in demand. So how can we skill the bus driver with those skills to get a job that is high in demand? So the granularity of big data helps us understand also how to transition people from occupation that are at risk to occupation that are in need. So in Lebanon, we did a quick survey. I'm just a disclaimer, it's not representative of all firms. It is a sample. So just to be clear on that, it's not representative of all firms in Lebanon, it's just a sample. But we did see that firms are hiring, especially in the IT and tech sector. And those are the technical skills that they need, the digital, the design, and they're finding hard time finding students and graduates with those skills. So oftentimes education, universities are not able to change curriculum as fast as the needs of the labor market. This is when training programs can help to bridge this gap. I think I'm running out of time, but okay, one quick example I wanted to give is a very interesting tool that ESCWA has developed. It's online, anyone has access to it. It's actually quite fun to play around with. It's for all countries in the MENA region, and they look at the skills. Instead of looking at only job title, they look at the skill set. So I know it's not very easy to read, but if you do go online, it's much easier. So what it does, so each point here, each dot, so this one is Lebanon, this one is Jordan, each point is a job title. Each line is the number of skills that are linked between those two jobs. So what it tells you is that your skills can be applicable to different jobs that you might not know about. And this, when you try to look for a job by looking at the skills, or these are what type of programs try to do. What are the skills and not what is the job title. So if you go into this, you can see how much skills are alike for different positions. One of the I found was that in Lebanon, graphic designer and web developer have over 1,000 skills in common. So someone who's a graphic designer can become a web developer as well. It can just take a very short training to be able to do that. On the role of the government, I'm just going to go to get this slide. So the role of the government is to basically, if I say it simply, address market failure that the private sector is not able to clear itself. So when it comes to those type of programs, 3 buckets. Information asymmetry. So this is to try to understand nationally what are the skills gaps. This requires to be able to analyze what are the skills in need and demand and what are the skills in supply, ideally doing it in a dynamic manner using big data to make sure that you have the real latest information as opposed to periodically. Then you have the public good and the externality nature of it. Those type of programs, training, has to be accessible to anyone. It has to be inclusive. So the government can help reduce the cost, can help make sure that most people have access to it, and that it is relevant to the needs of the labor market, linking it to the information that they get on the gaps. The last one is the lack of job opportunities. Here, obviously, it's very difficult to address, but there are policies and reforms that can be done to attract investment and employers to generate more economic opportunities. There's also a lot of structural reforms that need to happen, but that is also one of the role of the government. So I'm not going to go into details in this. I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of international experience of countries actually doing it. There's the US, the Skillful Initiative, there's Singapore, this one is from Austria, where they're using big data to inform what are the skills needed and what are the training needed to ensure that workers have the latest skills needed by the private sector. Australia is also revolutionizing it on this. So this shows, for example, how a statistician with some of the emerging skills that are most demanded can be a data analyst. And also they can see if there are jobs that are decreasing, like information officer, they're not finding employment anymore. They can work as tourism and travel advisors because there's that much similarities in the skills. And it's a growing sector. So Australia is using it to advise on the training needs and on the shift transition from the utmost risk jobs to the most in-demanded. Those are two examples from the region. Jordan and Saudi Arabia also are doing a lot of leveraging data, big data, to inform labor market and policy recommendations. On the advantage and disadvantage, so the advantage obviously is the big volume, is the time, the cost effectiveness. It enables to get really at the granularity level of skills, and you don't need to generate costly surveys that take time and that only provide a snapshot of what is, of the situation. The challenge is, obviously, you need experts, you need people with technical skills, expertise, because big data without interpretation and contextualization will not give you the right recommendation. You have technology constraints, the limitation on data quality, data privacy. This will be a topic of the next session as well on the panel. On the World Bank initiative we're doing in Lebanon, so the World Bank has partnered with BDD to set up Forward MENA, which is a training and skills initiative. We have done a number of training with Microsoft, Code.org, and other international providers. But one of the things that we will be launching soon is a platform. This is done together with UNICEF to link youth in Lebanon to the most in-demand jobs. And we're doing this by leveraging big data, online vacancies, to match the skills that each person interested to. So each person interested will register, will then get a skill assessment, a skill profiling. There will be either basic digital literacy, intermediate, or advanced. And this matching score is basically like the score how much your skill match to the job that you want, but also giving you example of other jobs that could also match because of the skills that you have. So instead of looking for one job title, you could actually look for 4 because you do have the skills for those 4. And based on this, you choose the job that you would like to pursue, and you get offered training by international companies. So Amazon, Microsoft, LinkedIn, Simply Learn, at a very discounted rate, and then you can get access to the job that you would like to apply. Anyone interested in this can let me know. We're planning to launch in September. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Angela. And what a great presentation, and what a great experiment for Lebanon. I'm Samia, and I'm going to just jump in for 5 minutes. Hello, Beirut. I'm in Brazzaville, and I'd like to share with you, to complement some of what Angela has said, the really critical role of public sector in equipping its people with the necessary data and digital skills to be able to have a happy and prosperous future. This is all part of a larger conversation around digital economy. And we at the World Bank have been doing years of analysis on the elements and the enablers of the digital economy, which is supposed to, in a few years, to reach for each country that has kind of embraced the internet, high-speed broadband, high-end skills. It's supposed to be more than 25% of the GDP and a big part of the employment and the labor force. So what can governments do to support academic institutions, private sector, to be ready for that? We did a study in Africa for 5 countries to analyze the demand versus the supply. We did the same study in Asia. And I'm right here in Congo where I can see how pertinent this study is, just because you see the big gap and the lack of digital skills and data skills. By 2030, more than 60% of the jobs on the markets will require digital skills, and of these, half will require advanced data skills. What does that mean? Data visualization, manipulating data, raw data mostly, knowing big data, understanding software languages, also the basics, really, capturing data and capturing it correctly. So in Lebanon, whatever data is captured by government or private sector, to have it spelled correctly in Arabic and in English, to have it comply and abide by international standards for geographical data, for people's data, for transaction data, such as payments or registrations of people ID, for example. All these have very well set, very well studied international standards. And your regular employee, whether it's public or private, will need to know these skills, will need to understand the importance of data quality and the responsibilities, the ethics behind it. Also, something very important we sometimes forget because we're so much in a hurry to collect data and analyze it. But there is a whole shift and culture change that is coming for every country that I've worked on, where you really are serious about digital as really a new source of growth. And I can tell you, from Vietnam to Rwanda to now here in Congo, it's a very serious matter, and it's important to have the academic world, AUB here, our crown jewel, really our academic universities, our academic institutions, upgrade their curriculum to be able to follow, to have specialization in data, to reform a bit their economics program, math, engineering, it's a bit of everything. And to, of course, not forget the softer side of data, the graphic visualization, the design, even the architecture. Some of the jobs most sought after is data architecture. And it's not just about data, it's about human interface, human-centered design, a lot of the concepts that architects, traditional architects, learn about. So there's a lot to be done, and it's a collective responsibility. So I'm going to stop here, Lama, and hand you back the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angela. Thank you.